Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just Another Esports podcast. Once again, you're joined by me, your host, Nicholas Shady Bacon, and my co host, Mr. Kevin Hubris. This past week, we've wrapped up week 2 of stage 5. And I should never tell you guys again to just take a week off from watching competitive Call of Duty because apparently when I do, that curses it. And we actually get some pretty exciting matches and upsets that actually mattered for the playoff race, I guess, so to say. Not so much important stuff with the bottom, since we do know for a fact which teams have qualified for playoffs and champs. However, the seeding for that is super important, especially because of the absurd format that they do have, where the 7th and 8th teams are starting in the losers. So, my bad there. Please go watch those matches, at least some of them that we will be discussing here, if you want to kind of see some of that action firsthand that did unfold, as well as it was also a bad weekend for me in terms of predictions as I lost to the coin. I believe I went 5 for 10 and the coin went 6 for 10. Kevin, you were able to tie the coin, so hats off to you. I'm not going to diss the coin again, apparently, either, because it will seek vengeance upon my soul. So, two mistakes from me this past week that hopefully I will not repeat moving forward. But kicking off week 2 of that stage 5, we didn't really have too many exciting matches on that Thursday. They were pretty straightforward matches. We had Toronto versus LAG. That was a swift 3-0. And then we had Minnesota versus Seattle. That was also a swift 3-0. I know I predicted Seattle to take it over Minnesota. That, I think, was me just throwing it on a whim, just giving it to the Seattle boys now that they had nothing to play for really, but they kind of just got stomped then
Yeah,
and there.
I think Thursday's matchups can be surmised as this. The match times and how long it took to play out the matches were still less time than the amount of technical issues throughout the whole weekend. It was so fast.
That is actually a kind of a perfect way to sum that up. But moving into Friday, this is where things started to get spicy. We had that Dallas versus Florida matchup. Now, here I thought Dallas was going to take this relatively easy over the Florida Mutineers in 3-1 fashion, and you thought it was going to be a little bit closer since Florida, they do kind of show up for these more intense games. That's kind of what they branded themselves as
Yep.
over the course of this season. However, neither of us predicted that Florida was going to take the dub here in 3-1 fashion over the Dallas Empire off the back of huge performance from Havoc that Crimsix called a BZ because his performance was so good in that series. And then obviously Neptune was still performing at a high caliber. And then obviously you got Awakening and Skies putting up numbers as well.
Yeah, I will say that I was pleasantly surprised to see Florida beat Dallas, being a big Mutineers fan. I will say, though, that 3-1 Dallas, you took FaZe to uh, Game 9? What happened? Did your balls fall off? I don't know. Yeah, one-offs happen, spoilers happen, all that fun stuff, upsets, what have you. But I mean, Mutineer boys are hanging in there, and hopefully they can find some of this juice in the major, and then hopefully in the champs. They are in the playoffs though, for sure. So
Yes, they're 100% in the playoffs, and this is a big victory for them since they definitely want to move up into that sixth place spot. Currently, they're only 20 points behind Minnesota Rocker, who are in that position with, I believe, 220 points, and they are now tied with the LA Thieves at 200 points. The Dallas Empire, this was actually a really big loss for them because Toronto moved further, actually passed them up in the standings from this loss in the series and Toronto's wins over the weekend, and so they are now in third. So you definitely want to get that second place so you get advanced around into the winners bracket. So
yeah,
Dallas is going to have to really rebound from this. And looking at it by the numbers, I mean, they played two really close hard points. In total, there was only a 12-point difference between like the two hard points. It was 242 to 250 and 246 to 250. And in both of those hard points, Dallas got grossly outslayed. So I it's definitely not a panic button moment. And if they hadn't
Oh
gotten
no.
outslayed by such astronomical amounts from players popping off. Like, I mean, Neptune in the first one, he was positive 15. And I mean, in the second one, the whole team, it was kind of a team effort. They were all positive in that one. So, and they only lost by, Dallas only lost by 4 points in the second one and 8 in the first one. So, like, for this kind of feels more of like a one-off victory for Florida, where they still definitely need to improve upon some core fundamentals and hard points, so they don't need to have this just massive outslay advantage in them to pick up wins against solid fundamental teams like the Dallas Empire. But all in all, it's definitely a positive look for Florida moving forward into that playoff race, or I guess that race for that 6th place seed to start in the winners bracket.
Yeah. Um, definitely was really important for Florida to win this one, and it's kind of cringe that Dallas would lose it. But I don't know. I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Okay. The next one was a little bit more uneventful. It was the LA Thieves going up against the Atlanta FaZe. Both you and I predicted that one correctly. It was a 3-1 for Atlanta over the LA Thieves. LA Thieves, they gave some good looks here and there. I believe they took the S&D up against
I believe
Atlanta
so.
FaZe,
Let me check, make sure.
up again on that Moscow. Yeah, yeah, it was on that Moscow. FaZe was up 5-2, and then they ended up losing that in the end. I do remember that one because Simp was quite annoyed with that, since that's their second loss on Moscow. They had been undefeated up until they lost it to Dallas at the major, and so I think they're definitely kind of looking at that, especially because they were up 5-2. That thinking they should have won that, and hoping that that won't happen again, since they definitely can't lose one of those solid S&D maps for themselves. Moving on to Saturday, though, we kicked it off with another major upset. It was the New York Subliners going up against the London Royal Ravens. And the last time these two teams faced off, it went game 5, and London was able to clutch up in the game 5, where they have not been able to do pretty much ever. But it happens again here. London defeats the New York Subliners game 5. I believe they even took both. Did they take both hard points? I think they took both hard points off of the New York Subliners too in this series, which was a bit of a crazy feat there. Either they took, I'm almost positive they took at least one. But
Let's see. The Subliners took one hard point. They 6-0'd them in the S&D, the first S&D, and then London in a very surprising fashion took the Moscow Surge 6-1 over the Subliners. That's a game 5 for London. You know, traditionally they've been the ones that choke those, and they came out on top. So pretty
yeah,
even across the board. We've seen the Ravens perform really well in control, and they showed up and 3-0'd Subliners here. I guess the most important thing to note out of this is Clayster is taking this. I believe this next. What is the home series? This next home series called? The Seattle home
Seattle.
series. Yes, he's taking the Seattle's home series off, so he's not playing this week. He said it was like a mental health related issue, which totally understandable. I mean, the guy has
He's
yeah,
looked exhausted,
yeah. He
to say the
like
least.
I mean, there's been so much that's been going on the subliners in the subliners camp with ASIM not being able to participate in stage 4 because of visa issues and really just inconsistent performances all around. More roster changes to come, I'm sure. But not really an excuse whenever you go up against a London team. Not saying that London is the worst team in the league, but well, they're not in the playoffs, so they got spoiled, and this has got to hurt really bad.
Yeah,
Um,
it hurts a bit because they were in kind of that close contention, at least for that second place, or they even could get a third place realistically. But this loss here kind of it hurts them there, and especially with Clayster leaving the roster, Diamond Con's coming back in. Obviously, Diamond Con looked pretty good on that New York Subliners roster earlier in the year, but bringing a new player in just for like a temporary thing for Clayster to kind of take a break, it seems like they've kind of just submitted themselves to that 4th, 5th place spot where they're like, okay, we're just going to stay here. We're not really going to contest for third. We're not going to be able to drop down to sixth, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to end up playing Optic more than likely, unless somehow Optic's able to move up into that third place position. So this is kind of the best time to take it. And honestly, I feel like when teams are solidified in their standings as much as kind of New York and Optic are currently, at least on paper, this is kind of when in normal sports you may see them taking their starters out, giving them kind of a little bit of a break
Right.
in some of the end of the season matches to keep them fresh going into the kind of those postseason matches and playoffs. But all respect for Clayster. He recognized that he needed to take a break. It is unfortunate that they do lose here to New York Subliners, and this next week they'll be playing Paris and they'll be playing Atlanta FaZe. So don't expect anything out of that Atlanta FaZe matchup, but hopefully they can pick up a dub over the Paris Legion. The next Saturday matchup that we did see, though, it was Florida Mutineers going up against LAG. Florida was able to take a dub here, 3-1 over LAG. So 2-0 week from there. Florida's actually flawless so far in their group. So they're really, really looking to pass up Minnesota and claim that 6th seed spot to start in the winners bracket come champs. But moving into the last match on Saturday, it was Toronto versus Seattle. That was a 3-0. Toronto swept Seattle quite easily there. And so with that, we'll move on to the most exciting matches of the weekend, being Sunday. Sunday was quite enticing.
Nuts.
We had Paris going up against LA Thieves. On paper, you see that, okay, LA Thieves, they didn't look too bad against Atlanta FaZe. They took a dub over New York. I believe they beat London as well, or maybe they haven't played London yet. But you're looking at that, and you're like, oh, LA Thieves, this should be a relatively easy match for them over the Paris Legion. Hell no. Paris decided to come out and 3-1 stomp LA Thieves. Scraps wasn't even sure if he was going to be playing this week because he kind of was just like, well, you know, we can't make champs, so I might as well not play this week. And then he's like, you know what, screw it. I'll just come and play and just destroy the LA Thieves. Like, what? Okay.
Yeah, that's I have no idea what the hell's going on anymore with the LA Thieves. I'm pretty sure that JCap has screwed this team over so royally by just his presence that there is no such thing as consistency, and Nate Shot's too wrapped up in Gucci right now to worry about anything else.
Yeah, it was just a very odd. I think by the numbers, you just look at it, Slasher had a fucking awful series. He
Yeah.
was negative 32. He was rocking a 0.58. And when you look at kind of the past matches, that has not been the case. He's been probably the most slay heavy guy out of all the players on his team. Maybe you have Draza up there as well, kind of contesting him for that number one spot. Usually it's kind of been John struggling in the slaying category. However, this time he was around a 1, which is kind of where you want your entry SMG to be. So that's perfectly fine from him. It was really kind of just Slasher in this series that just got dumpstered on, in all honesty. And this really does hurt LA Thieves in that race for the 6th place spot. I mean, this is a really bad look for them because their matches aren't getting any easier in this group. And it looks like they're going to start in the losers bracket, and Florida is going to start in the winners bracket, which is only going to help them at that stage 5 major and come champs. So this was a match that the LA Thieves really could not lose, and they did, which is quite unfortunate for them. But moving on to probably the big, would you call this the biggest upset of the weekend? I mean, we had Florida beat Dallas, we had Paris beat LA Thieves, but
Chicago beating Atlanta?
Chicago beat Atlanta for the first time this season. I mean, they've gotten outside of like the first match where it went game 5, but then they got stomped. The other 2 times they played them, they've been pretty easy 3-1s or 3-0s for Atlanta FaZe. This time around, it went to the game 5. It went to the around 11, and Chicago was able to triumph over probably their longest seeded rivals this season in that Atlanta FaZe squad.
I mean, this was a really close game, and it could have gone either way. And Atlanta kind of played into Chicago's hand quite a bit during the series, especially after going. I've watched this 3 times now. Going back and watching it the second time made me feel like I didn't catch enough, and I went back and watched it a third time. After watching it a third time, um, they really did kind of just fold to a lot of what Chicago is doing. So great adjustments from Chicago to pull out a win against Atlanta. This is huge for Chicago. Is it the biggest upset of the week? No, I think the Subliners one is a bigger upset. I mean, that's spoiler. That's like spoiler, 101 right there. Paris, LA Thieves, like I said, the Thieves haven't figured out shit. But like Chicago, Atlanta, we've always known that Chicago had the ability. They just, I don't know, there was like a mental block or something. Um, it was
Yeah, and
nice.
this series Envoy came like to form, and I think one of the things that a lot of people were saying was that he wasn't kind of playing off in an island. It actually seemed like him and Scump were working together throughout this series, which is something that we haven't really seen over the course of the season so far.
Yeah, that's important, right? Your route man, yeah, he always gets paid and everything, but the honestly, the route man in Cold War is is more situational than just a dedicated person, right? And we found that you get a lot more success whenever your subs play as duos and get a very tight control of the map. Um, they definitely executed this time, and like I said, Atlanta kind of played into their hands, so it'll be interesting to see. And I guess the other point that I want to make here is that we saw this from Atlanta last year, where they were kind of limit testing. They were playing a lot of their bad maps. There's not really any bad maps for Atlanta this year, and I don't think that they played Chicago on any of their bad maps. But they could be testing out different strats um, in order to figure out what works for them and what doesn't before champs. And this would be the time to practice whenever you're going up against an optic team that traditionally is going to outperform their regular season attempts because it's now champs mode, and everybody knows how Scump gets during champs. So, I mean, GG's to Chicago for sure, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think that was final form phase either.
Yeah, I think another really interesting thing for me in this series was Optic Chicago. They picked Miami, SND. I do believe in this series, and that's been a map they have wanted to avoid the entire season. They played it, I think, in one of their first matches in the CDL of this season, and they lost it. And they hadn't played it until this match against FaZe. Yes, they do end up losing it, but they didn't look bad on it against one of the best S&D team in the game in this Atlanta FaZe squad. And so I think that's really important for this Optic roster is that they're no longer avoiding kind of their clear weaknesses. They're willing to put those out there and not just auto veto a map. And if you want to be a championship caliber team, then you can't have an auto veto. And I think that for me is probably the biggest like light of hope for this Optic Gaming roster to actually make a play at champs is that they're not auto vetoing certain maps anymore.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be really healthy for Chicago moving forward. They cannot feel like they have a weak map anywhere. It's stage 5. Champs is right around the corner. You have to learn how to play the game at this point. Like, stop being afraid of things.
Yeah. Especially because come champs and the championship match, you cannot hide behind a best of 5 series where you can eliminate half of the maps. Because a best of 9, you're pretty much playing all the maps, minus I think like 1 or 2. So you can't have any weaknesses come champs. The last matchup though, it was Dallas Empire up against the Minnesota Rocker. They beat the Minnesota Rocker. They haven't really had troubles with them since kind of the midway point of the season. So that one, I think, was to be expected. Dallas a bit back on track there, pulling out the wins. And Minnesota, another loss. They only got 10 points this week. Meanwhile, Florida, they got 20, so catching up in the standings there. That's kind of only why that loss there is a little bit significant. But moving on to some of the other talking points that we did kind of have during the week is Slacked got dropped from the Florida Mutineers. Well, I don't really like, he got dropped, yes, but it's more so because of his situation in the challenger scene, because there's a ruling where you can't have more than two people that are on the bench of a pro team teaming together in challengers. And I believe his current roster is like Methods, TJ, some other guy, and then himself. So one of those players had to get removed from a pro roster. Otherwise, that team would have been able to form. And it seemed like he was the one on that chopping block. Either he requested that or Florida just decided to do it at that opportune time. But either way, he is no longer with the Florida Mutineers. Who did they pick up though, Kevin?
So they picked up Yeez, kind of a little known challenger player. I don't know too much about him, but I'm here for it. I'm ready to support it. The big storyline that came out of this was that during a stream today, Slacked was calling the other teammates at Florida. He said that he didn't like any of them. He said they weren't his friends, and he felt that they were fake. Um, Pretty strong words coming from a guy who would, I'm guessing, would be looking to join a pro team next season, and to hear that about former teammates probably would dissuade a lot of other teams to pick him up. So it didn't really end on the best of terms, it seems. And honestly, I think really negatively of Slack right now. He hasn't performed well enough to talk that kind of game. So
Yeah, I I haven't thought well of Slacked for a long time as a person, let alone as a player or teammate. But I think that will be a really good conversation come the off season of what players we think will get a spot back in the league, what players deserve a spot, and what players don't. Because that I think that will be a very fun, controversial, spicy topic to have during the off season. But I think that's it for that Slack segment of his situation getting dropped from Mutineers and who they picked up. One of the other talking points, I saw this moving around on the timeline. It was that some people prefer Gunsmith over the Pick 10 system. And to me, that just blows my mind. That some people prefer this infinite weapon attachment, no trade-off, to something where you kind of have to pick and choose. And the reasoning I saw it confused me even more. It was because they said the Pick 10 system limits your creativity. And I don't know about you, but I don't see anything creative with just throwing infinite attachments on your gun and calling it a day. To me, having limited options enables you to be creative in how you use your points, and it opens up way more possibilities than just having a bunch of attachments that realistically are kind of all the same, and there's just a specific set of ones that are better than the others, and you just run all of those from those categories, from the 8 categories or whatever, the best ones from those 8 categories, and you just never change anything else.
yeah,
Like,
it stifles creativity, that's for sure. And the Pick 10 also prevents guns from just being super guns, right? I mean, imagine if you had to pick, one or two attachments for your primary weapon, no attachments for your secondary, because why on earth would you do that? You're lucky you even have a secondary a lot of times. Um, and then to wrap it all up, like the whole gunfighter thing this year, what the hell was that about? 8 attachments on one gun?
yeah, I don't know. It blows my mind. And I so you're of the similar mindset that you feel like the Pick 10 system, it allows more creativity than the gunsmith.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
gunsmith.
Okay.
What you okay? Put a million
Yeah.
attachments on your guns and have 3 perks and have your lethal and tactical and have all this other crazy stuff. Yeah, sure. Just
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
yes,
no, to me there's like there's no creativity in that. yes, you have like more, I guess, options in a sense, but it re like technically you have more options, but realistically it feels like you have less because you're just allowed to do everything. You're
Right.
just allowed to throw whatever you want, and there's no repercussions, there's no limiting factors where you actually have to use your brain to figure out what you want to run and what feels good and how you can make the most out of what you are given. So I feel like that's where the gunsmith, there's literally no creativity in that, and the pick 10 system allows for a lot more creativity and thinking and thought that goes into what you run because of those limiting factors of, okay, I only have these 10 points that I can allot to uh, my class.
Not only that, but pick 10 would balance out trophies because you would have to pick a trophy over something else. Um, the stupid ultimate ability, I don't know. I don't know why everybody feels like they have to have some alt in every video game ever created now. I do not want to press two buttons together to throw a trophy. That's just a lot.
Well, a trophy. Well, the things that they have as ults shouldn't even be ults
No,
realistically, or shouldn't even be abilities. They should just be equipment.
exactly.
If the abilities were like BO3 or BO4 abilities, then that makes a lot more sense because that's a little bit too powerful of something to just have as equipment, and that belongs more so on a cooldown timer than a trophy does. Like that's that's kind of weird, but that was, I guess, it for that topic. I just found that really confusing. I was honestly surprised by how many people I saw saying that they preferred Gunsmith over the Pick 10 system, and the reasons they were giving for it just blew my mind. But one of the other things that blew my mind was Slasher and his comments on league format. So Slasher, in Slasher's league, thank God we aren't playing in that. Um, it
Jeez.
would only be tournaments. It would only be tournaments, which for a franchise league, that doesn't work. It will never work. You can't just only have tournaments for a franchise league. Honestly, we're lucky to have as many majors tournaments as we do, because in a normal franchise league, you'd only have one of those at the end of the season. You would have way more regular season matches probably, but I honestly think the format that we have now with the majors and the kind of staged group play is the best way of going about it. You like the the 3 weeks of stages, it is your group play for your tournament. Just because you don't view it as that, and because there aren't spectators for that, doesn't mean that it isn't that. Because realistically, that is what it is. Yes, you're divided up into divisions, but you were divided up into divisions back in like BO4, back in World War II during the CWL days. So this format that we currently have is incredibly similar to the CWL format that I feel like everyone really liked. Now, if he's talking about going all the way back to BO1 days, where it's just a shit show and there's literally a tournament every like 3 or so weeks, every 2 weeks, and it's just run by a ton of different organizations, and that's a whole number topic. But you can't do that for a franchise league. It's just not going to happen. Now, if you want to do away with the franchise league entirely and get rid of your nice, probably around 100K set salary that Nate Shot's putting in your pocket every year, then sure, go
Yeah.
do that. Go make a lot less money and have to win a shit ton of tournaments in order to get your prize money. You saw Crimsix like bank account, like from all he is the most winning player in Call of Duty, and Sim's probably going to pass him up in prize money in a couple of years. Simply, and that's not even including the salaries that he's probably getting paid that Crimsix never got paid during the like 5 years, 7 years, six, like however many years he was playing before we got this franchise league. It just blows my mind. And for players like Slasher, who are very low marketability, if we're being honest, like he has a very um, disagreeable personality. He's not kind of your Scumps, your Claysters. What are some other players that are relatively well marketable? Dashy,
Yeah.
Envoy. Like all those players are pretty darn easy to market. They make content. They have a following. Even Octane at this point has been
Right.
doing YouTube for a while and has a certain amount of following. Like those players are the only ones that are going to survive really well if you get rid of this franchise league and have them need to get their own sponsors and go out to teams to get people to sponsor their
True.
team for these events and stuff. Because if you're looking at it that way, where you're like, okay, we only do tournaments, then you're looking at kind of a PGA format, which could work for Call of Duty. It
It's
would
how it
actually
used to be.
probably, yeah, that's what it used to be. And I think a lot of the people in the challenger scene and maybe the pro scene would prefer it to be that, but you have to kind of realize the trade-offs that you aren't going to be that the things that you're going to be losing if you move towards that PGA format. Not everyone in the PGA can make like a super good living off of playing golf. um, Only kind of the top of the top can really make a good living off of it.
Right.
And a bunch of the people in that bottom tier, they're playing for a couple of years and then they fall out. They have to get a different job. I'm not going to say a real job, but they have to get a more long-term profession, because golf isn't going to put food on their table or pay their rent or whatever other expenses they have. And so to me, that was just such a
Blasted
it was
take.
such a fucking stupid comment from Slasher.
You know what it is?
Um,
It's because Slasher probably thinks he's a Lanimal, and he is absolutely not at this point. He's too old. He's washed. Pulls a
I don't think he's
.58 against
washed.
Paris.
I don't think he's washed or too old. Um,
Washed.
but yeah, I don't agree with his thought process at all. In like his idea, it didn't even make sense. In all honesty, it made zero sense. But what do I know? I'm just a spectator. I don't play COD professionally, so I don't know anything apparently. But I guess another opinion that I thought was really bad, and apparently COD pros know everything. Apparently they know more than people that go and get an education in what they're talking about. We got Crib6 with a terrible fucking take of him saying that tough love is the best and most effective and only way of running a team.
Yeah, how'd that work out for
And
Hook?
and and apparently one guy, pretty well respected guy, I believe in the AM scene of Europe. I think currently he's working with Elevate. He was one of the guys that worked with Hydra before he came over into the States with New York, um, and has gone to school or at least studied kind of coaching ideology and kind of what works, and has read case studies. And he even posted a case study to Crimsix, like saying, hey, look at this. There are other methods. You have to adapt to players. You have to realize what kind of communication works with certain players. You can't just be tough love or this one type of coaching style with every player. That's not going to work. And Crimsix is like, nah, fuck you. I've won so many championships. You've done nothing. This is the only way of doing it. Get your snowflake ideologies out of here. Like, just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're a good coach. Doesn't mean you know
Right.
how to treat other individuals on your. It's like he's been going on a rampage on the timeline recently, and he needs to chill.
It's just
Because
for impressions, honestly, at this point. Like,
I
Crim6
mean, but
just says whatever he wants.
yeah, but when you're like attacking this guy for no reason, when he's just like putting his argument down and you're just deflecting it, it just pissed me off, because it reminds me of people that you present them the facts and they still don't fucking believe it. Like the Flat Earthers Society, who go out of their way to try to prove that the earth is flat, fail, actually prove that it's not flat, that it's a globe, and then still are like, we don't have enough proof. Like, oh God, you're so fucking. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And yeah, let's pray and hope Crin6 doesn't become a coach. And if he does, then he's definitely going to need a team that responds to that type of coaching, because that's apparently the only one he understands. That's the only ideology he understands. And maybe that's why we saw Hook leave his team, was that. And Clayster was kind of a really vital glue in their prior season of holding them together, because I do feel like you kind of had Krim as that bad cop aspect, and then you had Clayster probably as that good cop aspect, where he knew how to actually communicate as a human being, on a humanistic level to the other players on the team after Crimsix goes off. But do you have anything else to add? I know a lot of those topics were just me ranting at me being flabbergasted of what I was seeing on the timeline and on the flank
Nope.
and
Slashers
things along
washed.
those
Crim 6 is a
lines.
fat incel. Moving on.
Okay. All right. Your words, not mine on those, but
They can fight me.
all
They can block me
right.
on Twitter.
Oh, that's how you know you've made it. That's how you know you've made it. Haven't been blocked by Thorin yet, so haven't made it yet. Neither of us have, but we'll move on to our predictions for week 3 of stage 5. So kicking it off, we have the Paris Legion going up against New York Subliners. It's going to be difficult for the New York Subliners, obviously, because they don't have Clay. I see you're giving it to Paris probably as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone for a week, and you have to kind of think like what kind of preparation you can do. Paris is also coming off of some momentum because of the win over the Thieves, and I feel like Paris is just playing really good spoiler at this point. So I'm willing to give it to Paris. Not saying anything bad about the rest of the guys on the subliners, but I mean Clay's an integral piece, and you'd be joking if you said that he wasn't.
Yeah, no, Clay is definitely a very integral piece to kind of any roster he is on, especially this young and talented New York Subliners roster. I do think they can pull out the dub here up against this Paris Legion lineup. I think they just have a bit too much firepower to drop. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe Paris, they just need to not practice and then they can actually win, because that seemed to work for Scraps in that last series. But that's our first Thursday matchup. The coin, it went with Paris, by the way. So I'm going against the coin here. Probably not smart, but we'll see by the end of the week. Next matchup though, it's Chicago versus London. This one, I'm agreeing. It's going Chicago. I'm going to say 3-1. You're going to say 3-0. Hopefully Chicago doesn't choke here,
Yeah.
but it'll be on brand, I think, for them to choke a bit later. Hopefully they don't though. But coin's going with London. And we'll move on to Friday. Friday, we got Florida versus Toronto and Dallas versus Seattle. So Dallas versus Seattle, yeah, that's going to be a 3-0. Oh, I did a 4-0 for Dallas. But
I
it's going to
mean,
be
if it was possible, it would happen. If this
I mean,
became a
it
best of
could be
four.
possible. It could be possible. They could replay a map and have it go. But um, the Florida Toronto matchup is going to be very important.
Yes.
Toronto actually has a really tough week this week. They have Florida, who's currently undefeated, 3-0 of their group, and then they have Dallas. So this is going to be a really important week for Toronto in order to maintain that second seed going into playoff. And Toronto, they've just looked really solid. And that Florida win over Dallas, it wasn't convincing enough for me to give them the W here up against Toronto. And for that reason, I'm going to say it's going to be a 3-1 for Toronto over the Florida Mutineers. Florida definitely can play spoiler. Neptune's been popping off, and Havoc looked fantastic in that last series. If they're able to put that stuff together and play some cleaner, more fundamental hardpoint, then I could see them stealing the dub here up against Toronto if they take both hard points and then in S&D. I don't see them taking control, and I don't see them taking two S&Ds up against Toronto. But So it looks like it's going to be a clean sweep across the board in votes for Toronto. The coin also went with Toronto. So now we're moving into, unless you had anything to add on to that Florida-Toronto matchup.
I honestly couldn't even tell you where to begin with who's going to win that game or not. It's going to be a great one, though.
Okay. We have the battle of the European teams on Saturday to kick it off. Paris versus London. I'm going with London here. I mean, London 3-1 over Paris. I was thinking 3-2, then I'm like, do I trust them to have ice 2 weeks in a row? No, I don't. But I think London in that subliner series, they looked pretty good. They at least have some maps that they're feeling solid on. And yeah, Paris, they came off a hot win over the Thieves, but who knows? Like London's been higher in the standings than Paris most of the season, so I'll put some faith in the London boys to take out the dub here up against Paris.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that if Paris beats the Subliners, then they are pretty hot running, and I think that they'll now London and Paris pair up against each other pretty well. I if it goes to Game 5, I'm gonna give it to Paris just because I mean London's won one Game 5 and how many matches?
Two
Um,
Game 5s
yeah, two Game
now.
5s now. So yeah, so like I'm giving it to Paris, but it literally does not matter. So.
Yeah, realistically, this matchup doesn't matter because neither of these teams can make playoffs. I, I guess it's just more for end of the season standings. Moving into our next matchup on Saturday, it's Florida versus Minnesota. You're going Minnesota 3-1 over the Florida Mutineers. So I want to get your opinion on that because I'm definitely going the other way.
Oh, you're giving it to Florida? No, this is one of those games that Florida loses all the time. Minnesota, yeah, like they aren't gonna take Minnesota seriously. They're gonna be thinking about the Toronto game, and they're just gonna lose it because that's just what Florida does. So they prepare for the
The
really
coin
solid
agrees with
teams.
you.
They prepare for the really solid
Coin
teams.
agrees with you. Ah, man, do I really want to lose to the coin 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, you do.
I mean, I'm going with Florida over Minnesota. I'm giving it them a 3-2 victory over Minnesota. I yes, they like Dallas is a freaking solid team, and if they were able to outslay them by that much, I can only imagine what they'll do to Minnesota, who's less fundamentally solid and not as slay heavy of a team as the Dallas Empire. Yes, it's in the branding of Florida to lose this match. So I'm going against their branding. Please don't fail me. It's end of the season. Maybe maybe this is where Florida they turn it up. We get that what May, July Florida from last year at the right time. They're peaking at the right time, maybe. Maybe. Big quotations. But that's that matchup. Gosh, I hope I don't lose to the coin. Moving on to the last Saturday matchup, we got Chicago versus Thieves. This is the matchup where it's on brand for Chicago to lose it. It's 100% on brand for Chicago to lose it. So hopefully they defy their branding, as Florida will hopefully defy their branding, and Chicago will pull out the dub here and make a solid play to try and steal that third seed from Dallas, because that would be some spicy storylines there if they're able to pull that off. Dallas has a pretty sizable lead. I believe it's like 40 points, maybe. So Chicago would have to put in some major work. But if they do that, they're going to be looking real good come champs, because the third seed is going to play the sixth seed, which I don't think Chicago's scared of Minnesota, LA Thieves. Well, they're not scared of Minnesota, LA Thieves, or Florida. One of those three teams is going to be the sixth seed. And if they win that, they'll play Toronto, I do believe, since that would make the most sense. I'm pretty sure you would have the third or sixth seed face the second seed, and then the fourth/fifth would face the first seed. I think that's how that would work. And Chicago, I feel, definitely has a much better chance of beating Toronto Ultra than they do Atlanta FaZe. But that's getting way ahead of us. Both
Yeah.
you and we're going Chicago over LA Thieves. Coin, is it going to disagree? Is it going to agree? It's going to disagree. It's going to LA Thieves. Coin's going with the brand. It's going with the branding. So it knows what's up,
It wants a Gucci
apparently.
bag.
It wants a Gucci bag. It's ordering it right now from Amazon. Just auto did it on my account. Use my credit card and everything.
The Coin is gonna
Unfortunate. You hate
need
to see it.
a lot more of his money, friends, to get a Gucci bag. I'm just gonna be real.
Yes. Yeah, those are some pretty expensive bags. I
Pretty
mean,
sold
that's
out.
they're sold out. Who is buying $2,400 bags
People who have $2,400.
to burn?
I
Those things aren't
guess.
even. They don't even look good. They don't
Yeah, they
even
look
look that
stupid.
efficient
They
to
look
buy.
like Doctor Disrespect's vest.
I think everything Gucci looks pretty terrible, honestly. I don't think I've ever seen anything Gucci that I like, and it's always it's fashion. Fuck, I'm not even getting into that. I could rant about stupid bullshit things that are way too expensive and should not be that expensive all day. Uh, Sunday matchup, Seattle, LAG. Match means nothing. Will Seattle farm some points off of LAG? Sure, because LAG looks like absolute dog shit. It's going to be a 3-1, probably a 3-0. I wouldn't be too surprised potentially since its LAG rosters look terrible. Coin's going to agree. Bam, 3 across the board. Sunday number 2. Yeah, New York, Atlanta. Yeah, that's a 3-0 as
Yeah,
well.
it's a hot
So
3-0.
oh, it's a steamy one. And yeah, Coin agrees. So noted.
I mean, if the Subliners win this,
Sunday.
this would be nuts. Like, without Clay,
I mean, Atlanta, they don't have to win any more matches the entire stage.
yeah, but they're
They could
going to.
drop out. Yeah, I mean, they're yeah, they're going to, but they don't need to. Is the point. So, last Sunday matchup, really good one. This is probably the only Sunday matchup you should watch. No, just watch all the Sunday matchups. You know what? New York, they're going to beat Atlanta. It's going to be wild. Sure to tune in for that. Be sure to tune in that. Something crazy is going to happen at the Seattle LAG match. Nubsy's going to sub in, and he's absolutely going to like World Star Silly or something like something's crazy happening Sunday because I said that. All right, but last Sunday matchup, we got Toronto, we got Dallas. It's going to be a slobber knocker. Who's coming out on top? And tell me why.
I'm going with Toronto here. I think that Toronto has looked a little bit more consistent than Dallas. During this major, and Toronto plays a more fundamental COD. I think Dallas struggles against that. I think Dallas does really well at being more organized and structured than the other team, and I don't think that they do that against Toronto. Toronto is very much like stay in your lane and play the game. I will say that regardless of what happens in the Florida Toronto game, I still think that Toronto is the dog to win this one. So I'm looking forward to it for sure, and this would further put Toronto in the second place position over Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really, really, really important matchup for both Toronto and Dallas because this will most likely be the decider of who gets that second seed come playoffs. Yeah, this one could definitely go either way. I think like my gut is telling me Dallas is going to win this matchup against Toronto, but I don't. I'm gonna go against my gut. I'm gonna give it Toronto. I kind of want Toronto to win since I don't dislike any of those players currently for saying stupid shit. So I say that I probably jinxed them. Gonna knock on some wood.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go Toronto 3-2 over the Dallas Empire to close it out for stage 5 groups. So I think that's going to be it from us for this episode, unless you got anything else to say, Kevin.
Nope. See you next week.
Okay, well, that will be it from us. We hope you all have a fantastic weekend filled with some exciting Call of Duty action. and we will see you next time.
Later.